Every day, this poor man suffered in his wife's hands. She insulted him, beat him with broom, and treated him like nothing. One day, badly bruised, he walked into the bush and caught a strange bird in his net. That bird changed his life forever. There was once a poor man who lived with his wife, but his life was nothing but suffering. Every day, without fail, the wife would scold him, insult him, and call him useless names. If words were not enough, she would even carry broom from behind the stove and beat him like a child. This poor man had no rest, no comfort, and no happiness. His house was not a home, it was a prison of pain. Sometimes, when the woman was busy shouting, he would just sit quietly, wishing that life would change. But the beating did not stop. The shouting did not stop. One day, the wife became more wicked than usual. She beat him black and blue until his body was full of marks. The man could no longer endure it. With slow steps and a heavy heart, he left the house and wandered into the fields. But you know how some men are, no matter the suffering, they don't like to sit idle. So he spread his net to catch something, hoping that maybe his day would not be a total waste. Now, my people, what kind of bird do you think entered his net that day? He caught a crane, a tall, long-necked bird. And as the man struggled with the net, the bird spoke. Yes, it spoke like a human being. "Please, my friend," said the crane, "let me go free, and I will reward you well. I will not forget your kindness." But the poor man shook his head. "No, my dear bird. If I take you home, maybe my wife will finally stop scolding me. Maybe she will look at me with respect for once." The crane looked at him and said softly, "My friend, don't carry me to that wicked woman. Follow me instead to my own house. I will show you something that will change your life." The man, surprised but hopeful, agreed. And so, with tired steps, he followed the crane to its strange house. The poor man followed the crane until they reached its house. My people, the house was not like any ordinary bird's nest. No, it was a fine place, strong and neat, with shiny walls, as if the bird was not just an ordinary creature but something more. When they entered, the crane went to the wall and brought down a sack. The man looked at the sack. It was small, nothing special, just like a bag you could carry to the market. But the crane held it with respect. The crane stretched its neck, looked at the man and said, "Now watch carefully." Then it called out, "Two out of the sack." My people, immediately two handsome young boys jumped out of the sack. Strong and cheerful they were. They carried oak tables as if they were carrying feathers. They spread fine cloths on the tables, silk that shone like moonlight. On top of the tables, they set all kinds of delicious food and sweet drinks. The poor man's eyes nearly fell out. Since the day he was born, he had never seen such a feast. The aroma filled the room, his stomach danced, and joy entered his heart. The crane said to him, "Eat and be satisfied. Then take this sack to your wife." The man could not believe his luck. He knelt down and thanked the crane again and again. His heart was light for the first time in years. After eating and drinking well, he carried the sack and began his journey home. But, my people, the road was long. Evening was falling, and the man became tired. So, instead of going straight home, he decided to stop at his cousin's house along the way. He thought, "Let me rest here tonight before I go to that troublesome wife." When he entered his cousin's house, the woman and her 3 daughters welcomed him warmly. They quickly prepared supper for him: yam porridge with palm oil, small soup by the side. But the man looked at it and shook his head. "This food is not good," he said plainly. The cousin was surprised. "Aha! My brother, please manage it. We don't have much tonight." But the man smiled proudly. "Clear it away. I have something better." Then, before their shocked eyes, he brought out the sack, just as the crane taught him. "Two out of the sack," he commanded. And immediately the 2 fine boys came out again, carrying the tables, laying silk covers, and setting a feast like no one had ever seen before. The cousin and her daughters opened their mouths wide. The food was more than enough, the drinks were sweet, and the sight was wonderful. They ate until their stomachs were full, praising the man. But deep inside, the cousin was not just happy, she was jealous. And in her heart, she whispered to herself, "This sack must not leave my house. I will take it for myself." That night, After they had eaten the wonderful food from the sack, the cousin's heart was no longer clean. She smiled sweetly at the poor man, but her mind was full of plan. She called her 3 daughters aside and whispered, "My children, did you see the sack your uncle brought? That sack is not an ordinary sack. With it, we will never suffer again. We must take it from him tonight." The daughters looked at one another in surprise. "Mama, how will we do it? He is watching it closely." The woman hissed, "Leave that to me. Before morning, that sack will be mine." Later that evening, she went to the man and said gently, "My dear cousin, you have traveled far today. You must be tired. Please, go and take a hot bath so that you can rest well before continuing your journey tomorrow." The poor man, who trusted her completely, agreed. He followed the daughters to the bathroom, leaving his precious sack behind. The moment he entered the bathroom, the cousin quickly brought out another sack that looked exactly the same. She and her daughters worked fast, sewing and tying until it matched perfectly. Then, quietly, she took away the real sack and replaced it with the fake one. By the time the poor man came out, fresh and happy from his bath, the cousin welcomed him warmly and showed him to his bed. He slept like a child, never knowing that his treasure was gone. Early the next morning, the poor man woke up with joy in his heart. He carried what he believed to be the crane's sack, thanked his cousin for her kindness, and set off for home. As he walked, he whistled and sang, thinking of how proud his wife would be when she saw the wonders of the sack. But my people, he did not know that the birds in the forest were laughing at him. They chirped and whispered to one another, "This man is happy for nothing. His sack is empty." But the man did not hear them. He was too busy dreaming of the respect he would soon gain. The poor man's heart was full of excitement as he drew near his house. From a distance, he began to shout, "Old woman, come outside and welcome me." But instead of joy, his wife's sharp voice cut through the air. "You useless man, come here first, and I will finish you with this poker." Still, the man only smiled, thinking, "Today she will change. Today she will see that I am not as worthless as she thinks." He entered the house boldly, hung the sack on a nail, and commanded just as the crane taught him. "Two out of the sack." "My people," silence filled the room. Nothing came out. The man frowned, repeated the words louder. "Two out of the sack." Again, nothing happened. Not even a grain of rice appeared. His wife folded her arms and stared at him. "What nonsense are you shouting? Have you gone mad?" The man, sweating in shame, tried again and again, but still the sack remained empty. The wife hissed, carried her wet broom, and began to sweep the ground angrily around him. "You stupid man! So this is why you were making noise from the road. You came here to disgrace yourself again." Unable to bear the shame and her insults, the man ran out of the house and went straight back into the fields. Tears almost filled his eyes. It was there, among the tall grasses, that he saw the crane marching proudly about. He went to the bird and fell on his knees. "My friend, I am ruined. I did everything you told me, but the sack gave me nothing. My wife mocked me and beat me with words again." The crane listened calmly, then nodded. "Stand up. Come with me once more to my house. There is something you must learn." And so, for the second time, the man followed the crane, not knowing what new wonder or trouble awaited him. The crane led the poor man back into its strange house. Once again, it went to the wall and brought down another sack. The bird's eyes shone as it looked at the man. "Listen carefully," it said. "Not all sacks are the same. Some bring food and joy. Some bring trouble and pain. But both can teach wisdom." The crane raised its head and called, "Two out of the sack." My people, this time it was not fine boys that came out. Instead, 2 rough, strong men jumped out. Their eyes were red, their arms thick like palm trees, and in their hands they carried heavy sticks. Before the man could understand what was happening, the 2 men rushed at him and began to beat him left, right, and center. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" As they beat, they sang, "Don't boast of what is not yours. 1, 2, or you'll catch hot beating. 1, 2. The poor man cried out in pain. "Stop! Stop! Please! Crane, help me!" The crane only raised its wing and said calmly, "Say the words I taught you. Through tears and sweat, the man shouted, "Two into the sack." Immediately, the rough men stopped, turned around, and crept back into the sack. The man was panting, his body sore, but the crane looked at him with wisdom and said, "Now you understand. Take this sack. Use it well. Those who cheat you will face what you faced today." The man, though still in pain, bowed low. He carried the sack carefully and started his journey again. As he walked, hunger began to disturb his belly. Smiling, he thought, "Maybe I will try this sack for food too." He placed the sack on the ground and commanded boldly, "Two out of the sack." But my people, instead of food, the two rough men appeared again. They jumped out with their big sticks and began to flog him thoroughly. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" And they sang once more, "Don't boast of what you don't own. 1, 2. Next time think before you show. 1, 2. The poor man shouted quickly, "Two into the sack," and they disappeared again. He sighed deeply. "Ah, this sack is not for my stomach. This sack is for revenge." With that thought burning in his mind, he changed direction and went straight to his cousin's house. The poor man reached his cousin's house, carrying the second sack on his shoulder. He greeted her warmly, hiding the pain still fresh on his back. "Cousin," he said with a smile, "please, can you heat the bathroom for me? I want to wash myself before resting." The cousin was glad. She thought, "Good. He has come again with his magic sack. Tonight, I will collect another one." She quickly heated water and showed him the bathroom. But this time, the poor man did not even wash. He only sat inside quietly, waiting for her next move. Meanwhile, the cousin and her 3 daughters could not hold their hunger. They gathered around the table, looked at the sack hanging on the wall, and the woman said, "Let us enjoy before he finishes bathing. Watch and see how this sack will bring food again." She called out proudly, "Two out of the sack. But my people, what came out was not food. Ha! It was those 2 rough men with their heavy sticks. They jumped out fiercely and shouted, 'Greedy pack! Thievish pack! 1, 2. Return the sack you stole. 1, 2. Before the cousin and her daughters could escape, the 2 men landed on them. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" They beat them mercilessly as they screamed for help. The cousin cried out, "Go and call your uncle from the bathroom. Tell him ruffians are killing us here." The eldest daughter ran to the bathroom door. "Uncle, please come out. Men are beating us inside the house." But the poor man answered calmly, "I am not done rubbing myself yet." The 2 men continued their flogging. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" The cousin shouted again, "Second daughter, go quickly, call him out." The second girl ran and knocked. "Uncle, please, we are dying. Come out and help." The man replied, "I am just washing my head." The men beat harder, singing as they flogged, "Greedy pack! Thievish pack! 1, 2. Return what is not yours. 1, 2. The cousin screamed louder, "Youngest daughter, call him again. Quick!" The youngest daughter rushed to the bathroom. "Uncle, please, Mama is fainting. Come out." But the man replied coolly, "I have not finished drying my body." The men continued beating until the cousin could no longer endure. Crying and shaking, she finally brought out the first sack she had stolen. "Please take it. Here is your sack. Just let these devils stop beating us." The poor man smiled to himself inside the bathroom. He knew his plan had worked. When the cousin finally surrendered the stolen sack, the poor man stepped out of the bathroom, looking fresh and calm, as if nothing had happened. He raised his voice and commanded, "Two into the sack." Immediately, the 2 rough men stopped beating and crept back inside. The cousin and her daughters collapsed on the floor, holding their sore bodies, groaning in pain. The poor man picked up both sacks, the good one for food and the other one for beating, and tied them securely. Without saying another word, he left the house. As he walked, his heart was light. He thought to himself, "Now I have everything I need. One sack will bring respect and good living. The other will punish anyone who dares to cheat me again." When he drew near his house, he shouted joyfully, "Old woman, come out and meet me." But as usual, his wife's harsh voice rang out, "You broomstick, come inside here and your back will pay for all your noise." The poor man only laughed softly. He entered the house with confidence, hung the good sack on the nail, and called out firmly, "Two out of the sack!" And instantly, the two handsome boys sprang out. They carried tables, spread silk covers, and laid before them a feast of delicious dishes and refreshing drinks. The wife's eyes widened. She had never seen such food in her life. Without even asking questions, she began to eat and drink greedily. "Old man," she said between mouthfuls, "this is wonderful. From today, I will not beat you again." The man only nodded, smiling quietly to himself. He knew that with these sacks, his suffering days were over, but he also knew his wife's greedy nature would soon put her to the test. After the feast, the poor man carefully took the good sack and locked it away in his storeroom. But the bad sack, the one of beating, he left hanging on the nail in the house. Then he went outside to stroll around the yard, humming to himself. His wife sat inside, her eyes following the sack like a cat watching a mouse. The memory of the delicious food still danced on her tongue. Her greed began to rise. She thought to herself, if one sack could bring all that food, maybe this one can bring even more. Why should I wait for this old man? Let me try it myself. She stood up, looked around to be sure her husband was not coming, then faced the sack boldly. With a proud voice, she said, "Two out of the sack. But my people, it was not food that came out." "Ha!" The two rough men jumped out again, holding their thick sticks. Their eyes were red like fire. Before she could even scream properly, they landed on her. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" As they beat her, they sang, "Would you beat your husband true? 1, 2. Now we'll beat you black and blue. 1, 2. The woman cried and rolled on the ground, screaming for help. "Old man! Old man! Come quickly. 2 devils are killing me in this house." But her husband only strolled up and down outside, laughing softly. "Yes, let them beat you well today. You will learn that not every sack brings food." Inside the house, the 2 men kept flogging her without mercy, their sticks landing like rain. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" The woman screamed louder. "Old man, please forgive me. They will break my bones. Come and save me." Her husband finally shook his head, sighed, and called out the words, "Two into the sack." At once the men disappeared, creeping back into the sack. The woman collapsed on the floor, her whole body sore, groaning and holding her back. The poor man entered the house, looked at her, and said quietly, "Now you understand how it feels when someone is beaten every day." From that day, peace began to enter their home little by little. After the beating of that day, the wife could not walk properly for many hours. Her back was sore, her legs were weak, and her pride was broken. She lay on the mat, groaning, while the poor man sat outside calmly, whistling to himself. For the first time in their marriage, she understood the kind of pain she had been giving her husband all these years. When she finally gathered strength, she looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Old man," she said weakly, "forgive me. From today, I will not raise broom or stick against you again." The poor man nodded, but he did not answer immediately. He wanted to be sure her words were true, not just spoken out of fear. Later that evening, he brought out the good sack, the one of blessings, and called, "Two out of the sack." The fine boys appeared, carrying tables, laying silk cloth, and serving another feast of delicious food and sweet drinks. The wife's eyes widened again, but this time she did not rush or grab like before. She sat quietly and ate with respect. When she finished, she bowed her head slightly. "My husband, thank you. I see now that you are not the useless man I thought. It was my foolishness that blinded me." The man smiled gently. "It is not about me being useless or not. It is about patience, kindness, and respect. A home cannot stand with quarrels and beatings every day." The woman nodded, holding her sore back. "You are right. I have learnt my lesson." From that night, she began to change her ways. The house that was once full of shouting slowly began to taste peace. But my people, let us not deceive ourselves. A habit that has grown for years does not disappear in one day. Temptation was still waiting around the corner. For some weeks, peace truly entered their home. The wife no longer insulted her husband every morning. She even gave him food without complaining. The poor man began to feel like a real human being again. But one night, while the man was asleep and snoring gently, the wife sat up on the mat. Her eyes wandered to the two sacks hanging on the wall. Her mind began to whisper, that first sack, the one of food, is powerful. But what if the other one, the sack of beating, can also bring something good if I try again? Maybe the men only beat me because I didn't command them well. Maybe there is another secret inside. She got up slowly so as not to wake her husband. She tiptoed to the sacks, her hands shaking with greed. First, she touched the good sack and smiled. This one I already know. It brings food. Then she stretched her hand to the second sack, the one that had flogged her almost to death before. She bit her lip nervously. Should I try it again? Or should I leave it? But greed is like fire, my people. Once it starts, it keeps burning until it destroys. She whispered boldly, 2 out of the sack. And as before, the 2 rough men jumped out instantly, their eyes blazing, their sticks raised. Before she could even beg, they descended on her. Pa! 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 And they sang again as they flogged her. Would you beat your husband true? 1, 2. Now again we'll beat you blue. 1, 2. The woman screamed and rolled on the floor, her cries waking her husband. The poor man came out, looked at her, and shook his head. Woman, you never learn. Greed has tied you like rope. He let her cry a little longer before commanding, 2 into the sack. At once, the rough men vanished, creeping back inside. His wife lay on the ground, panting and weak. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she begged. Please, I will never touch that sack again. Truly, I have learnt now. The man only smiled faintly, carried both sacks, and tied them high where she could never reach them again. After that second foolish attempt, the wife became calm. For many days, she could not sit well because of the flogging. Whenever she tried to grumble or quarrel, the pain in her back reminded her to keep quiet. The poor man, however, was thinking deeply. He said to himself, these sacks are not just for food and flogging. They are blessings from heaven. If I use them wisely, our life will change forever. One early morning, he carried the good sack and went to the village square. The elders and villagers were surprised to see him smiling boldly, for they knew him as the poorest man in the land. He spread a mat and shouted, Come, my people, come and see what God has done for me. They gathered around, some laughing, some mocking, saying, And, poor man, what can you show us? Your tattered clothes? Your empty calabash? But he lifted the sack and commanded, 2 out of the sack. At once, 2 strong, fine boys appeared, bowing respectfully. They brought out a golden table covered with white cloth. Then they laid plenty of food, yam pottage, roasted chicken, palm wine, ripe plantains, and all manner of delicious meat. The crowd gasped, some even screamed. The boys served everyone in the square. Each person ate until their stomach was full, and still the food did not finish. The elders stared at the poor man with new respect. Ah, so this man has been hiding such wealth, they whispered among themselves. The poor man only smiled quietly. He was no longer the beggar they thought he was. But far at the back of the crowd, his wife was watching with greedy eyes. Though her back was still sore, her heart began to burn with a new plan. As the villagers licked their fingers and praised her husband, the wife's heart was burning. She looked at the golden table, the fine boys, and the respect on people's faces. So this is how he has been hiding glory from me. She thought bitterly. He makes me look like a fool in the compound while he shines in the village square. That night, when they returned home, she could not sleep. She kept turning on the mat, her eyes fixed on the 2 sacks hanging high on the wall. She whispered to herself, If this sack can feed the whole village, then what if I carry it to my people in the next town? They will honor me. They will call me queen. They will know I am not just a poor man's wife. Her husband was snoring softly beside her, unaware of the fire burning in her mind. By midnight, she stood up quietly, dragged a stool under the sacks, and climbed. With trembling hands, she untied the good sack and hugged it to her chest. She looked back at her husband, who was still asleep, and hissed, Old fool, you think I will just sit here and watch you enjoy respect alone? Never. With that, she slipped out of the hut and disappeared into the darkness, carrying the sack tightly as if it were her own child. The moon watched her silently as she hurried towards her father's compound in the next village. Little did she know that the path she had chosen would soon bring her shame greater than all the beatings she had received. By the time the wife reached her father's compound, the cock was about to crow. Her clothes were dusty and sweat covered her face, but her eyes were shining with excitement. Her father, mother, and siblings were surprised to see her at such an hour. "Daughter, what brings you here before daybreak?" they asked. She smiled proudly and placed the sack on the ground. "Today, you will know that I am not suffering in my husband's house. You will see that I am greater than all of you." They looked at one another, confused. The woman clapped her hands and shouted, "Two out of the sack!" Instantly, the two fine boys jumped out. They spread a golden table and began to bring out food and drink in abundance. Yam porridge steaming hot, roasted fish, sweet palm wine, fried plantain, everything the heart could desire. Her people gasped. Her mother almost dropped her wrapper in shock. "Ah, daughter, is this your husband's doing?" The woman raised her chin with pride. "No, this is mine. I am the one who controls the sack." They all ate and drank until they were satisfied. Some even carried food home in calabashes. But as they wiped their mouths, her father frowned. "Daughter, you speak too proudly. If your husband gave you this blessing, then it is his. You should not boast as if it is your own." The wife hissed and waved her hand. "Father, forget that old poor man. I am the one shining now. Let the whole village know me as the owner of this sack." Her father shook his head sadly. "Pride will destroy you, my child. A wife who steals from her husband only brings shame to her father's house." But she did not listen. Instead, she planned a bigger show for the next day. The woman was not satisfied with showing her father's family the magic sack. Her pride grew like fire in dry season grass. She wanted the whole village to bow to her. The next day, she dressed in her finest wrapper, tied a bright scarf on her head, and painted her lips red. She carried the sack on her shoulder and walked to the village square, where the elders were settling disputes and traders were opening their stalls. "Come, people, come and see wonders," she shouted, clapping her hands. "Today, you will know that I am the most blessed woman in this land. Even my husband cannot match me." Curiosity drew the villagers closer. Children ran, women gathered, and men leaned on their walking sticks to watch. The wife dropped the sack in the middle of the square. She spread her hands proudly and said in a loud voice, "Two out of the sack." Everyone gasped as the two fine boys jumped out. They spread the golden table and laid silken covers. Plates of jollof rice, bowls of pepper soup, roasted yam with palm oil, and fresh palm wine appeared as if by magic. The crowd shouted in wonder. See food. See miracle." The woman stood tall, enjoying their praise. "You see now, I am not like other women. My husband is nothing compared to me. I control wealth with just one word." The villagers clapped, but the elders frowned. One of them, an old gray-bearded man, shook his head. "Daughter, blessings are not for boasting. Be careful. Pride and greed always end in sorrow." But the wife ignored him. She ate and drank with the villagers, laughing loudly and praising herself. What she did not know was that her husband had already spoken with the crane again, and a bitter surprise was waiting for her. As the wife boasted in the village square, her husband was quietly walking back from the crane's house. This time, the crane had smiled and given him not one but two sacks, the good one with the fine boys and food, and the bad one with the rough men and their heavy sticks. When he reached the square, he found his wife in the center, laughing and shouting, "I am the richest woman alive. My husband is nothing. All of you should respect me." The husband stood quietly and waited. Then he stepped forward and said, "Wife, since you love this sack so much, show us again. Call them out once more." The wife, thinking he wanted to shame her, clapped her hands and shouted proudly, "Two out of the sack." But this time, instead of the two fine boys, two rough, strong men with big sticks jumped out. Before the woman could even scream, they started beating her. Whack! Whack! Would you boast against your husband? 1, 2. Would you steal what is not yours? 1, 2. The crowd scattered in shock, some laughing, some shouting. The wife rolled on the ground, crying, "Ah, my back, my waist. Please stop. Husband, help me." But the husband only folded his arms and said, "Yes, let them teach you sense. You made me suffer shame in this village." The beating continued until the woman begged with all her strength, "I will never raise my hand against you again. I will never boast. I will never call you names. Please forgive me." At last, the husband spoke the words, "Two into the sack." Immediately, the two rough men disappeared back inside. The woman lay on the ground, sore and trembling. The villagers whispered among themselves, and the old gray-bearded elder said, "Now you see, pride and wickedness always carry their own punishment." From that day, the wife changed completely. She never beat her husband again, never called him names, and never boasted before people. She treated him with respect, and they lived together in peace. As for the man, he kept the good sack safely, and whenever they were hungry, he would simply say, "Two out of the sack," and food and drink would appear. So at last, the poor man who once suffered found joy, and his wife learned wisdom the hard way. And that is how the story ends.